We make some predictions. We test those predictions and those assumptions with experiments. Objective, verifiable, repeatable experiments. We analyze the results and we draw conclusions.
I think I know an explosion when I hear it.
And it sounded like a countdown. And at the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1, and he was just saying, just run for your life, just run for your life. And then it was like another 2, 3 seconds, you heard explosions.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
What was the report titled? Final Report on the Collapse of the World Trade Center Twin Towers. Probably should have called it Final Report on the Initiation of Collapse. This all goes to support the hypothesis of controlled demolition. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thank you all for coming. I'm really elated that the hall is so full. Thanks very much for coming. My name is Don Koberg, Professor Emeritus in Architecture since 1995, which seems like a very long time until I look at the 31 years I taught here before that in architecture. I started teaching in the Department of Architectural Engineering. I was disappointed that no faculty or department or club would accept my challenge to support this hall tonight for a speaker who is certainly talking about a controversial issue. And so I happen to be the servant of Mr. Richard Gage. Excuse me. I happen to be the main sponsor for tonight's event, but I'd like to have you recognize my associates in this event, in this endeavor, because they're also very actively involved in the 9/11 Truth movement. Mr. Mark Phillips, Mr. Rich Vesco, Mr. Matt Whedon, and Mr. Bob Banner of Hope Dance. Thank all of you for helping me do this. Our nation will soon mourn the 8th anniversary of the worst crime in its history, a deadly attack that has yet to be fully or fairly investigated. And that's really the purpose of our event and the entire 9/11 Truth movement. Following that horrific September the 11th event, former President George W. Bush addressed the nation saying, "I want justice." There's certainly one Bushism that no patriot can dispute. Tonight's justice and truth-seeking speaker has been a practicing California architect for over 20 years in the Bay Area, operating out of Berkeley, California. He is a professional willing to place his credibility and reputation on the line, and who has endured substantial personal sacrifice. A tireless and tenacious advocate for questions that all too few are willing to ask, and truths that fewer still are willing to face, truths that may shake the foundations of our entire worldview. His deep concern about the destruction of three World Trade Center high-rises on 9/11 began after hearing the startling conclusions of a reluctant 9/11 researcher, David Ray Griffin of Santa Barbara, who was interviewed that day in May of 2006 on KPFA's Guns and Butter radio program in Berkeley. This changed Mr. Gage's life radically. It was Because of his experience in steel construction, he developed a deep professional interest in the unusual structural collapses of those three World Trade Center buildings, and inspired him to found Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. AE911truth.org now numbers over 700 architects and engineers and a myriad of associate supporters. Please welcome Mr. Richard Gage, AIA, architect. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It is great to see all of you here today. I want to thank you for turning on the microphone. There we go. No. Oh. I got a green light. I'll use this until we get going. Thanks for being willing to reconsider the very difficult subject of the destruction of the World Trade Center and its staggering loss of life on 9/11. Just as architecture and engineering projects are sometimes joyful and sometimes quite difficult, this particular one has proven to be one of the most difficult. And not difficult in terms of reaching conclusions, but difficult in terms of the implications of those conclusions. And difficult in terms also of finding people open-minded and willing to actually come and look at the evidence. So please, a round of applause for yourselves for getting here tonight. My commitment to you tonight is to speak the truth and to leave you with extremely valuable information. But please, don't believe me. We're not looking for believers. This is not some kind of new religion. Check out every fact that you hear, because it's extremely important that we know the whole truth about this event. After all, it served as the pretext for the invasion of two countries in which already over 1 million people have perished, and a host of other ills that we are suffering from as a nation. Now, all of this remains intact if we continue to sweep the truth about 9/11 under the rug of history. And only the truth about 9/11 will stop another 9/11 type attack from happening. We must dedicate ourselves to finding out exactly what happened and why, and to bring those actually responsible to justice. So these are among the many reasons that we must peer into this painful part of our recent history and to re-examine the relatively new physical evidence that we've not seen in the mainstream media. But first, a little bit about me. I'm an architect of 20 years. As Don mentioned, I've worked on numerous steel-framed, fireproof buildings, including these $3 and $10 million gymnasiums in Northern California, the day-to-day construction administration for this $120 million high school campus, and most recently with the firm I worked with in Berkeley, 2 million square feet of retail parking structure and fireproof steel frame mid-rise office space, all together with over 1,200 tons of steel framing in Las Vegas, Nevada.